It was Colossians 2
2
and
9.
9. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because First Timothy 3:16, I would say those two are parallel from my understanding, but if you say he, that could change the passage
Yeah. But
a lot.
actually, I do before we get into Colossians 2 9, I want to go back to
Yeah.
First Timothy 3 because I think this is important. Um, uh, oops, there we go. So let me see here. So I'm going to start with verse 15 because I think this is important, right? So, but if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest to behave thyself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and the ground of the truth. Without mystery, without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifested in the flesh, justified in spirit, seen of angels, preached into the Gentiles, believed on in the world, and received up into glory. This First Timothy 3:16 is a song. Okay, it's a hymn, one of the early Christian hymns. Like Philippians chapter 2 is a Christian hymn, right? And before this, though, he's talking about the church, and I think that this needs to be talked about. That the church here is identified as the pillar and the ground of the truth, and he starts there, and then he says this big Christological statement, right? And I think now this is not something that you have said, right? And so I won't put these words into your mouth. I will put them, from my own personal experience, right?
Yeah.
As a former Oneness Pentecostal, the things that I heard myself. I was taught that the early church compromised on the doctrine of God. I was taught that the early church um, uh, fell to pagan ideas and paganism, right? And I was taught that, for a very long time, people didn't baptize the right way and they didn't receive the Holy Ghost because they weren't speaking in tongues. And so, there's this big darkness that kind of falls upon all of church history, right? And yet, bless God, that King James Version Bible that you have in your hand or that your dad might preach from, it's
Hmm.
based on these Greek manuscripts that these compromised people who are not full of the Holy Spirit, who are corrupt, murderous, politically motivated people, right? Supposedly, they're the ones who preserved the writings of the New Testament, the Greek text by hand, under under Islamic rule in the Ottoman Empire, right? Um, and and also they were before Christianity was accepted uh, and became the official religion of the Roman Empire under Domitian and other people like Nero, um, were highly persecuted, right? And they still managed to preserve by hand these texts, right? And so, what I would say is if you don't trust the people who are handing you the text, because when you have a King James Bible, right, it didn't just like appear, right? It is the process of a translation from an Anglican king, right, and his council of translators, and the screening process that he wanted to put through on those texts, right?
Yeah.
But the Greek text underneath it is the product of the Orthodox Church, right? It's the products of the Greek speaking Orthodox Christians and the Greek writing Orthodox Christians and the monastic life, um, who preserve these texts. And so I find it difficult to believe why you might trust the text, but not the church that produced the text, right? I trust the text, but I don't so the question is like, okay, did God preserve his word And if he preserved his word through these pagan, corrupt, compromised people, why would you accept this document? If you don't trust the people giving you the document, why would you trust the document, right? Or this, and I think that's important. The church was established by Jesus Christ, and it was an identifiable organization with an organizational structure founded on these 12 apostles, and then these 12 apostles established bishops and priests and deacons, right? And that form of church government has continued to the point where, if you go to Thessaloniki, right, and you say to somebody at the church in Thessaloniki, hey, who started this church? They'll say Paul, right? Those communities still exist to this day. And so, so I want to point this out that, the church is not just a organization like Kmart or, Target or AT&T or whatever, right? But the church is the vessel of God. It's his presence on earth. It is Christ working in and through a body of believers that's never gone away, right? And it's the same church that preserved these Greek manuscripts, right? And in this Bible, the same group of people. Saint Athanasius was present at the Council of Nicaea, and he was one of the biggest fighters against Arianism, right? The doctrine that Jesus Christ is like some created being, right? As opposed to truly God and God in the fullest sense of the term God, right? That's what was being said at the Council of Nicaea, that he was truly God in every way that God is God, right? This same organization, Athanasius was the first person to give us a list of 27 books, right? The 27 book canon of the New Testament that you have, there was more than one canon list, right? There were canon lists where Barnabas was included and Shepherd of Hermas was included, and Second John and Third John were not included. Revelation wasn't included, and varying views on what exactly the boundaries of the New Testament are, right? But you have in your King James Bible these 27 books of the New Testament, and the first person to put forward that list that we have is St. Athanasius, who also so happened to be a Trinitarian at the Council of Nicaea, right? And so for me, there's this huge tradition, and I'm very you can't avoid tradition, right?
Right.
The opposite of tradition is making things up on your own, and you certainly didn't make up the Bible on your own, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So the Bible was handed down to you, and the idea of a pastor, right, was handed down to you, you know,
Right.
um,
Right.
and the concept of a church was handed down to you, right? These are all things that have been handed down. And what I'm saying is that the church is a reliable source of information and a reliable source of teaching that has produced millions, untold amounts of holy men and women who would give everything, right, for Christ, and did give everything for Christ, right? And this same people who preserved the Christian faith and the Christian Bible under the Muslim occupation and under pagan persecution and even Jewish persecution in the very beginning, right? These are the Trinitarians, right? These are these are the teachers of the doctrine of the Trinity, the same people who preserve the Bible. And so I see the doctrine of God connected with the doctrine of the church, right? The Apostle Paul says that the church in Ephesians chapter 5 is the body of Christ, and also he refers to he says that we are one flesh, right? In the same way that Adam and Eve were made one flesh, right? The church and Christ are one flesh. And this is a deep and mystical and mysterious thing, that Christ is truly present on earth in the church, right? In this body of believers.
Yeah.
And because of that, I want to do theology with the church, right? I want to believe the things that the church has taught and always taught and believed and
Yeah.
always believed, right? So I wanted to say that because however it is that the church understands God was manifest in the flesh, or however it is that the church understands, in the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God. That's the way that I want to understand it. And I think that there's no there's no coincidence, right, behind Paul saying this deep mystical thing about the church, and then immediately following it up with a deep mystical thing about who Jesus Christ is, right? So I want to get your thoughts on that before we go to Colossians 2:9.
Okay. Um, for one, I would say that I would have to trust the the text was a transliteration, so they didn't translate it as far as like trying to input a meaning into it. It was just kind of a simple process, not a simple process, but a direct process of transliterating one word to, what the phrase would be. They weren't trying to, you know, like you translate Spanish to English, you have to change some of the words, and that's why when you read the old English, there's some things that you have to know what the Greek and Hebrew mean in order to understand it. But even by what you said, like the Bible has to be trusted more than the people who canonized it or transliterated it, or it has to be trusted more than the people who did that process. Because if it's the fact that they had a belief in the Trinity, they still have to be careful with that word, the way that they put it together, the way that they give it to us, because they want to be careful and not like I don't think that they changed the meaning of the Bible. I don't think that, because you got to think all of those people are separate people who probably have different views, and some of them probably don't agree with each other's understanding of their interpretation of the Bible even after it's done. So I would just simply say that I trust what they brought us more than the people who brought it to us. And there is some value in understanding what they view it to mean because they had their hands on it. But I still would say that that word that was preserved is, I would have to trust more in that than I do the people who, help preserve it, because there were other people like all the apostles that actually wrote it down. So it's like if I was writing a biography. Matter of fact, not even writing a biography. If I'm organizing the story of the biography, you can't necessarily trust my interpretation of that story because all I'm doing is organizing the biography in a way that, would fit in a movie. So I just, I guess I would just ask, would you trust the word more than the people who preserved it, or would you trust them the same?
Great question. I really appreciate that. It's not that I don't trust the word, right? The scripture. It's that I don't trust myself.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
That to me is the big thing. So when we come to the text as 21st century North Americans, right? Especially if we're reading from a King James Bible, right? We're reading in a way that is, we're not reading in Greek. We're not first century, second century, or third century, people who understood that language, right? The way that it originally was. We're
Yeah.
not our whole worldview, our whole system of thought, the way that we think of the word person, for example, right, didn't even exist prior to Freud. where we think of like you got a person and then you've got, that person has a consciousness and that's consciousness has a subconsciousness. Then you have like the id and the ego and the super ego and like all the things that come up with our a modern concept of the word person. That's new from like the 1900s and like the things that we um do when we're looking through the 21st century. There is no blank slate, right? There is no tabula rasa. Nobody's able to come in to the Bible just blind, right? Or not blind, but with a blank um, point of view. There is no neutral point of view, right? Nobody can do that. Nobody can come to the Bible and just read it and then understand immediately what it was that the authors intended,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Nobody can do that. So the question then is like, okay, so who do I trust to be able to help me interpret this text, right? Do I trust David K. Bernard in his book, The Oneness of God? Do I trust Dr. David Norris in his book, I Am a Oneness Pentecostal Theology? Do I trust um, uh, William Chalfant, right? Or Jerry Hayes or Lee Stone King or any of these people, right? Am I trusting them to help me, or am I trusting my dad, right? To teach me how to read and understand this text, right? I was like, okay, now that we've both established that we're trusting somebody, right, to help us
Right.
understand this text, the question then is, okay, so what are the most reliable sources to help me understand this text? And for me, it's always going to be that body of Christians that always existed since the beginning, right? So I can read. This is one thing that's really refreshing, for me, because if I read Saint Ignatius, right? Who he writes these 7 epistles on his way to be persecuted, on his way to be martyred. He's fed to lions, right? Saint Ignatius of Antioch. They feed him to lions, but on his way there, he writes these epistles. We have 7 of them still to this day that we preserved. And the way that he writes about God, and the way that he writes about worship, and the way that he writes about the Eucharist and things like that, right? I want to think and write in the same way that he did. And I could say the same thing about Saint Justin Martyr, who writes in the 150 AD, or Saint Athanasius, who writes in the 3rd century, or Saint Basil, who writes in the 4th century, right? We have this paper trail that goes all the way back 2,000 years, right? I can look at, this one. This is a good one here. This is Saint John of Damascus, on the Orthodox faith, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the question that I want to say is, do I trust myself and my dad and my pastor at the local parish, right? Or the local church, right? Or do I want to say the same things that these guys have been saying all the way back? And I do think that there's an extraordinarily high degree of continuity that exists across language barriers, right? The Latin fathers are saying the same thing that the Greek fathers are saying. Um, the Syriac, Christians are saying the same thing the Greek Christians are saying. I can go and I can look at the Russian church, or like even the modern, American saints like Saint Seraphim Rose, right? There's this continuity of thought and this stream of thinking, this way of thinking, the way this way of talking about God that goes all the way back to the 1st century, and as I was pointing out earlier, even before the 1st century, when you look at things like Philo of Alexandria and some of these other documents, right? Um, and so I want to be in that stream, right, of the people of God. And I don't want to trust me because there's nothing in me that's good, that's trustable, right? Lean not on your own understanding. But I do want to trust in that body of believers who preserve the text, right? And that to me is the issue. It's not about whether or not I trust the Bible, because of course I trust the Bible. The question is, do I trust myself? And I can't rely on myself. I can't. I'm not that smart. I'm not that intelligent. I'm not that charismatic. I'm nobody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, what in doesn't the doesn't Jesus leave us examples to follow in the Bible? Um,
Yeah.
because it's not that, like I said, it's not that I dismiss that, those early people. Um, but at the end of the day, you are to seek out your own salvation. So it's you having that relationship with God, and obviously, how can you hear without a preacher? A preacher that's been sent. You need those people in your life. But the problem is, I have to be careful the balance that I have on how much I lay trust in what those people said, especially if any of the people who wrote any of those books if they've ever disagreed with each other.
Mhm.
Then I have to look at that and say, okay, well, somebody's wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and I haven't read the books. What I'm saying? I haven't read all that material, but I can only assume that someone else has written books around that time, and they may have had disagreements, they may have had conversations, they may have had debates. Even if they were healthy, that any disagreement would disprove me following them, because then which one of them on which topic? So it's like I do get what you're saying, and it's not that I'm like dismissing it, because at some point you do have to say, well, look, all like with science, like, yeah, they've done so much study for science, and there's no sense in trying to reinvent the wheel. But you can take that wheel for what it is as a mold and say, oh, I take this mold as a good starting point, but I don't take it as like my confirmation.
Right. Yeah. By the way, you're frozen um, on my screen. Am I frozen on your screen?
Okay, I think something went off.
Okay, you're
So
good. Okay,
yeah,
you're good. No, I heard everything that you said. Um,
okay.
just the image was frozen. So, to that I would say this. When you look at the early people who disagreed, right?
Hmm.
Um, um, most of them weren't even using like the four canonical gospels that we believe in: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? A lot of them are using books like Thomas. A lot of them are using books like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, or these other documents from the second and third centuries, and
Just trying to. Okay.
things like that. And or the Gospel of Truth, right, is one. And if you look at, like, so Saint Irenaeus, he wrote this book called Against All Heresies, right? And let me give you, like, oh my gosh, some of the things that these people said, you would not even be able to discern them as Christians, right?
Hmm.
Um, so let me show you exactly what I mean by that, because I'm not just saying that to be mean about these people. I'm saying that to demonstrate um, just something that's true about these people. Okay. Um, so, and by the way, we're about to discuss pleroma. So this goes right into what you want to talk about in Colossians 2:9.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get into this. So absurd ideas of the disciples of Valentinus as to the origin, name, order, and conjugal productions of their fancied aeons with the passages of scripture which they adapt to their opinions. Okay, so this is the pleroma in Gnostic thought. You ready?
Hmm.
They maintain then that in the invisible and ineffable heights above there exists a certain perfect pre-existent aeon whom they call proarche, propater, and bythus, and describe as being invisible and incomprehensible, eternal and unbegotten. He remained throughout innumerable cycle of ages in profound serenity and quiescence. There existed along with him an Enoia, whom they also called Charis and Sige. At last, this Bithius, determined to send forth from himself the beginning of all things, and deposited this production, which he had resolved to bring forth in his contemporary Sige, even as seed is deposited in the womb. She then, having received the seed and becoming pregnant, gave birth to Nous, who was both similar and equal to him, who had produced him and was alone capable of comprehending his father's greatness. This Nous they call also Monienis, the father, Monienis and father, and beginning of all things. Now, notice their idea of God the Father is not even the first. Okay, so
Mm,
so God the Father is not even the highest God. The highest God is this pro arche guy. Okay, but we're
mm,
going to keep going. And beginning of all things, along with him was also produced Aletheia, and these four constituted the first and first begotten Pythagorean tetrad. Right, so they don't even have a trinity; they got a tetrad, which they also denominate the root of all things. For there are also first Bythus and Sige, and the Nous and Aletheia and Monogenes, perceiving for what purpose he had been produced, also himself sent forth Logos and Zoe, being the father of those who were to come after him, and the beginning and fashioning of the entire pleroma. See that word? Pleroma. All right, we'll keep going. By the conjunction of Logos, that's word and Zoe were brought. Zoe is life was brought forth anthropos, that means man, and ecclesia, which means assembly or church, and thus was formed the first begotten Ogdoad, the root and substance of all things, called among them by four names, vis-a-vis Bythus and Nous and Logos and Anthropos. For each of these is masculo-feminine as follows: Propator was united by a conjunction with his Enoea, then Monogenes, that is Nous, with Aletheia, Logos with Zoe, and Anthropos with Ecclesia. Okay, you seen the problem? You know what I mean? These people called themselves Christians, and
yeah.
these are people from, the year 200 or so. Okay, and their whole worldview, right, is this idea where you've got like the highest God, there's like no beginning, and then like he kind of creates, a couple of things, and then like out of those couple of things, you've got the Father and a few other like Aletheia, which means truth, right? And so you have all of these attributes. We have, let me see here, try to get back to it, right? So I'm going to translate some of these for you, right? We have nous, that means soul, okay? I don't know what sige means, but we have charis, that means grace. We have monogenes, that's only begotten. We have aletheia, that means truth, right? Logos is word, Zoe is life, okay? And by the way, this keeps going, right? It just keeps going exactly like that, right? And so that's what a pleroma is, right? The pleroma is this idea that you have all of these created agents and ways that God kind of speaks to the world or is in the world, or not even necessarily God, because it's not God the way that we think of God. It's more like divine energy or divine movement or almost like a pantheism type thing,
Hmm.
right? And it's all kind of broken up like shattered glass throughout all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And so the question then is like, okay, are these people Christian? Would you say they are?
I mean, followers of Christ. So I would say no.
Right. But Jesus is in there, right? When it said logos, they believe that logos that's part of that big old giant thing is Jesus, right? And like some of them were even like, the serpent in the Garden of Eden,
Hmm.
they thought that was Christ, right?
So are you saying that it's easier to tell between the people that are like not even close to it versus the people um who do know what they're talking about? Is
Yeah,
that why you're
I'm just saying the canon of scripture, right? That these opposers to Orthodox Christology and Orthodox theology, right? were like nowhere near the ballpark. Like they're like super Mormons, because at least the Mormons have the Gospels. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like at least the Mormons have the same scriptures as us. They just have more, right? I'm talking about like stuff that you would have never thought of, things that were just absolutely insane. These concepts that you would not recognize as Christian whatsoever, right? And so then the question is like, okay, um, if these are who we're disagreeing with, right, then I want to be on the side that's got the biblical canon, right?
Right.
And what I'm saying is that the stream of thought, right, that starts from the writings of the New Testament, and then goes into Ignatius, and then goes into Irenaeus, and then goes into Saint Justin Martyr, and then goes into you know Athanasius and Basil the Great, and Gregory of Nyssa and Gregory Nazianzus, and Saint John the Saint John of Damascus, and Saint Simeon the New Theologian, and all the way down, right? This is one very serious continuous stream of thought that's nothing like any of the outsiders of that movement. You know what I mean? So just the fact that you've got a 27 book New Testament that's brought, you know, that was given to you by the Orthodox Church, because that's what it is, right? When you have your book, when you have your Bible, right? That's from the Orthodox Church, right? Um,
Yeah.
right? You're already participating in our tradition. Just the fact that you have a Bible, you're participating in our tradition, right? And it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
same tradition. It's the same tradition that produced and preserved and collated and canonized these books, right? That is also Trinitarian, right? And you yourself, Ashley, one is when I say Trinitarian, I'm going to use the term as loosely as possible, right? You believe that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost are God, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that is Trinitarian. Now you might have some thoughts about the Trinity, right? But do you believe that you know um, that Jesus Christ at some point didn't exist?
Mm, no.
Right. That means you're not an Arian. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you believe that Jesus is a different God from God the Father?
No.
Right. That means you're not a tritheist. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're already engaging in our tradition, and in our modes of thinking, right? You don't realize it, and it's not just in our theology, it's also in your practice. Tell me, what is your midweek services?
You mean Wednesday Bible study, Sunday worship
Mhm.
service?
Okay. And do you have other church services apart from Wednesday and Sunday?
Maybe Monday prayer, but no.
No. Okay. What about Friday?
Yeah, we don't do anything on Friday.
You don't do anything on Friday? Okay. But you've heard of churches getting together on Friday?
Yeah, like well, maybe like a special type service or something, but not like every Friday.
Okay. 1 second. My dog's being annoying. I'll be right back.
I had no problem. I guess I'll just read some comments until he gets back. Retro, let's see. Be a great time to discuss what it means for something to be canon.
All right. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
yeah.
So like Wednesday and Friday are traditional fasting days,
Mm-hmm.
okay, in the church. So we go to church on Sunday because Christ was resurrected on Sunday, right? We go to church on Friday because Christ was crucified on Friday, Good Friday, right? We go to church on Wednesday because Christ was handed over by Judas on Wednesday, okay? So you participate even in small ways. Just the fact that you're going to church on Wednesday, and every Protestant church that I know of, right? They've got Sunday night service, they have got Sunday service, and then they've got Wednesday service, right? And they'll always be able to tell you why on Sunday, but a lot of them won't be able to tell you why on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Because you are engaging in our tradition, whether you acknowledge it or
I
accept
don't
it
think
or
I don't think I
realize
have
it,
a
you know?
problem with that, like because certain traditions, like even certain holidays, I don't necessarily have a problem, and I know a lot of them came from certain churches. Some people say that some of the stuff came from the Catholic Church. I don't think it's necessarily a problem unless it's evil, so unless it's like it contradicts scripture. So
Mhm.
from what you're saying, like, yes, I do say that um that those people, they definitely hold weight, just like
Mhm.
somebody who has studied more than me would
Right.
hold weight, as but just how much weight is what I'm saying
Mhm.
would they hold. So
Right.
I feel like we would agree more than we disagree on how much we would trust those people. Um,
Mhm.
like I would never say that it would be better if they didn't say anything, that they
Yeah.
didn't give their I always think that more information, even if it's wrong, is better than less information. But all I'm
True.
speaking about is like my confirmation after I've done all the looking at this view, looking at this view, looking at this view. Then I go to prayer and I say, God, help me understand it, help me get a confirmation, and
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
th- that's kind of like where I would land. But it's like, yes, I would never say that that this church didn't do that these people didn't do some really good necessary things and help us in our views. But it's just, I can't just say I believe in the Trinity, because I can't basically what I'm saying, I can't make a conclusion there because of that information. I can say
Yeah.
definitely worth considering because of that.
Right.
So I
So,
definitely think that what you're saying, it holds so much weight, but
yeah.
it's not like, okay, I just want to agree with them. I think it's
Right.
kind of, it would be a lazy approach to say they've done the work. I can just trust them. I can listen to them and hear them out. Even you can't hear without a preacher. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean you can't get confirmation without a preacher. It's
Mm.
specifically
Yeah.
talking about hearing. So what you're saying is very valuable, and people need to, yeah, listen. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Go
Yeah.
look up those commentaries. Why would you resist when you already have the environment around you giving you answers? All you're doing is just limiting yourself to the small amount of information you have. So I
Mhm.
definitely agree that, get more information. Why would you not study the early fathers, church
Mhm.
fathers? Why would you not? That's
Mhm.
crazy not to, right? But um
So, have you
I mean, I studied some commentary, but I don't know as far as like
patristic fathers? Have
how
you
to
read?
go about that, I guess.
Yeah. You don't know how to go.
But
Okay.
I'm not against it, is what I'm saying.
I'm glad that you said exactly that. I don't know how to get into that.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So, Ashley Keaton, beloved, my friend.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. I already like you. I like you a lot, actually.
Thank you,
Um,
sir. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
I feel the
how
same.
do I get involved in this? Well, bless God, there's this ministry on YouTube called Archangels Books, Book Club, right? And one of the things that we do is we always pick a piece of modern scholarship, and then we also pick a piece of ancient scholarship, right?
Hmm.
And the modern scholarship is cool right now. That's what we're doing right now. But the next book that we're going to read is either, well, depends on the voting, right? Because people vote, but it looks like it's either going to be the Didache, right, which is a first century document, or it might be Justin Martyr, right? And so we're gonna read these. We're gonna read them together as a community. We're gonna talk about it
Yeah.
on YouTube. We're gonna right. Before this, we read Saint Athanasius, right, on the incarnation of the Word. So we have a playlist of these things. And we had St. Simon the New Theologian. We have 2 volumes of his works that we went through and really, really enjoyed, had a great time. So, what I would say is you just start reading, and maybe a good one would simply just to pick up a copy of the Apostolic Fathers, because these are the church fathers who are the immediate successors to the apostles, right? After the writings of the New Testament, what exactly do the earliest Christians say right after the New Testament's done being written? Actually, some of them are writing before the apocalypse is written, right? Like I was saying earlier about Ignatius of Antioch, how he was eaten by lions and whatnot, on his way to be killed. Some of his epistles were actually written before Revelation was written, right? So we have these documents; they can be read, and they're simple, they're easy, they're not full of these like big Greek words, it's one of those things. When I hear people describe Orthodox theology and our system of writing, that's called systematic or dogmatic theology and stuff like that. Yes, we do have that for sure, right? But the majority of these writings are easy, normal Christian books to read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's great to encourage people to read these texts, right? They've existed for a long time. And then I would also say is it's not like immediately jumping into Avengers and Endgame, right? Like if it's not like in order for you to enjoy it, you have to watch Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 and Thor and Captain America and all of these
Right.
movies where you can, you know what I mean? Right? It's
Hmm.
not like that. It's like there are these documents and you can read them and you can see what early Christians have said and the way that they've written. And it's not like this very dense stuff about the difference between person and nature and that
Yeah. I
certainly
mean,
there's some of that.
I'm
That's not
definitely
the case,
down with
you know.
I'm excited to get more knowledgeable of, everything. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
haven't I'd love to be more knowledgeable on these things for sure.
yeah.
I definitely wanted to, because I'm gonna have to wrap up in a minute. I definitely wanted to get into I think the last thing